I can't blame her. It was, well, I lived it. It was pretty horrible. I can't imagine what living with me was like. It wouldn't have been a lot of fun.
Stay tuned. Coming up in this episode, it's part one of my two-part interview with Laverne Friesen and his wife Chancy, talking about his mental health near miss and how they're working through those challenges together. But first, let's hear from our amazing sponsor, Midwest Fire. Midwest Fire, a factory direct manufacturer. That means no middleman. You work directly with the good folks right at their factory in Laverne, Minnesota. If you want to see just how easy it is to design your own Midwest Fire truck, check out the Create a Spec tool on their website. To get started, go to MidwestFire.com and click on the Create a Spec tab at the top of the homepage. Hello and welcome to episode 310 of the Situation Awareness Matters show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this program is to help to improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-stress, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SAMatters mission is simple. We want to help you and the members of your team see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from my office in St. Paul, Minnesota, having just returned from delivering two programs for the Firehouse World Conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you to Editor-in-Chief Peter Matthews for your faith and confidence in my message and for the opportunity to contribute to the success of Firehouse World. Today's feature segment is sponsored by the Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. The Online Academy trains and certifies your members on situational awareness skills essential for improving high-risk decision-making outcomes. To learn more about this highly acclaimed program, visit SAMatters.com and click on the Online Academy tab under the Training section at the top of the homepage. All right, let's jump into our feature segment, part one of my two-part interview with Laverne Friesen and his wife, Chancy, talking about his mental health near miss and how they're working through those challenges together. Hey everyone, Rich Gassaway here from the Situation Awareness Matters show. And I am very excited to be able to welcome back one of my previous show guests, Laverne Friesen, or Verne, as he goes by. I had him on an episode, I think it was 301 and 301 and 302. And he was sharing a hold on just a second. He was sharing the experience that he had with a mental health near miss event. And it was my first episode of that type of message shared. And we got some amazing feedback. And then when we were done with the show, he said, Rich, there's part of this message that didn't get shared. And that's the message of the perspective of my wife, who had to deal with issues related to my near miss event as well. And I said, that's a show worth coming back and doing. So I want to welcome back Verne, and I want to welcome for the first time his wife Chancy to the show. So thanks for being with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start with a little bit of just the two of you all's togetherness background, where you met, how you met, when you met, and let's do some fun conversation before we get into the really the crux of the conversation related to the mental health near miss.
Well, I had a friend whose New Year's resolution was to get a boyfriend, and decided she was going to try online dating. and didn't want to do it solo, so asked me to do it too, but I was not paying for that. So I joined a free site and went on several horrible dates. And I was on my way home to delete my online dating profile when I got a message from Verne, where he said something very sarcastic that neither of us remember, but that was the start.
She, on her profile, she said she was very sarcastic. So I said something sarcastic and she was hooked.
And how long ago was this?
8 years ago, actually. February 9th, it'll be 8 years
Nice.
that we actually met in person.
Yeah.
And how long did you date before you got married?
What was it?
Almost
2 years. Yeah. It's funny because I told her that she was going to have to propose to me after 2 years. I wasn't ever going to propose to her. And I surprised on her on the beach in Mexico. And couldn't say no, so we got married just over 2 years after we met.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was concerned that we were going to have to stay in Mexico because at that point we did have a joint bank account and I had no idea where the money for the ring came from. So either he'd robbed somebody and we were staying, or he'd pulled a fast one, which he had. And so yeah, we were living together, about 6 months after we met. And at that time, Verne had already been in law enforcement for several years and was a volunteer firefighter. I come from an administrative background, so I'm pretty flexible. I can work just about anywhere. And so I was volunteering with a victim services organization with the RCMP in addition to my full-time job. And so I think we felt that going into life, with my spouse being in emergency services, we were uniquely prepared for what that looked like because I was going to next of kin notifications. I was doing court liaisons. I had some exposure as well, and he would go to a bad scene and come home and we'd debrief. So we were uniquely prepared where a lot of people wouldn't have been.
There were some really bad calls that she helped me through. And so in my mind, or in both of our minds, we were well prepared because this isn't, you always talk about if you do something enough times and you get the right result, you're lucky. But we didn't feel that way. We felt that we were doing the right things and getting through these. And this one really snuck up on us.
Yeah. We had a life. And so Verne had gone from working in that position where we were when we first met to private sector. And then we found out we were pregnant with our second child, and he was working 2 weeks away at a time. And doing that with one small kid is a challenge. It would have been more than my patience could handle. And so, we decided that it was time to start looking at opportunities for him to come home and be home every day. And so when the opportunity for us to move into this community where we still are now, start putting down roots, because we really hadn't done that. We just sort of moved over and over again as we were building our life together. And then coming here, we had really big expectations for what our life was going to look like as far as being together all the time, and like I said, putting down those roots. And almost immediately, I would say that some of the concerns with the organization became apparent. Our son was born about 2 months after we moved here, and I think he was only 10 or 12 days old the first time that Verne came home for dinner and said something that had happened at work, and I went, that's not okay. Like, so it was pretty quick after we arrived that we started seeing some of the red flags.
You brushed it off though, right? You don't realize really how it's affecting you. Even when I look back over the last couple years, we've done a lot of dissecting what's happened in the last couple years, and it's very there's a lot of cumulative stuff that just you don't realize it, and then you look back and you're like, yeah, well, that's not really normal, and that's not really normal, and that's not really normal, and you add it up, and well, since I was on here last time, I'm just going to sidetrack for a second. I got a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people stepped forward and said how much I helped them, or almost gave them permission to tell their story, to talk about it. And I've heard some pretty hard stories. There's a lot of people out there suffering. And so a guy I work with, he said, you should write a book. No, my story's not good enough for a book. It's not long enough, whatever. Came home and told Chancy that. And she's like, yeah, it's a good idea. And told my psychologist that. And she's like, yeah, if nothing else, it's therapeutic. So I started writing it, and I'm about 5 chapters in, and I've titled the one chapter "The Perfect Storm," because it's kind of what it is. In that first response world, we're prepared for that one big event, right? We all know that if you go to a bad car accident where a bunch of people die, or a house fire where people die, or whatever it may be, something tragic, that we're all prepared for that. We bring in the critical incident stress guys, the the peer support. We know to talk to the guys that have been on that call, but
Check in with them.
Check in. We don't really necessarily think about the everyday stresses, or it could be something at home, right? Maybe a guy's going through a divorce, or his kids are sick for the last 2 weeks. It could be anything, and that was one of the big lessons I learned: is what are we doing to each other, and you just got to look out for each other.
So what were some of those, without going back and doing all the detail of those earlier episodes, summarize some of those things that were happening that were contributing to the buildup of your stress level and what was causing these challenges for you. What was it? An incident where you had a fatality event, or a series of incidents? Kind of frame it up for those that maybe haven't seen those episodes.
For sure. I think there were a couple of incidents where just kind of the tactics involved. There was definitely some concern about my safety. Protocols not being followed, that put me at risk. Somebody that just happens to be living in my neighborhood, very irrational individual, had threatened me publicly, threatened me on a traffic stop. I'm very active with my children, walking around to the park all the time. I was quite concerned about bumping into him. There was a heavy workload at work, extra duties that caused a lot of stress, kind of a lack of support.
Lack of training to handle those.
Yeah, lack of training. I didn't feel I was necessarily qualified for the task. There was a couple of incidents that would fall under the bullying and harassment category that I was witness to. I witnessed a workplace violence incident. There was a lot of incidents in a bad workplace culture, and it just added up over time. And we saw it coming for a little while, and we talked about it, and I took stress leave, but that didn't fix it, and we didn't realize at the time.
Were you coming home and talking to Chancy about these things as they were
Um,
happening, or these were conversations you had later?
Well, the first bit, I would say,
I think, Verne, I think you should just be quiet and let Chancy.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'll let her. Yeah.
So he would be coming home, and it was like I was a mosquito buzzing in his ear in the dark. Everything I said was annoying. He was very short with me and angry with me, and I'd be going, and like literally looking at him and going, "Why do you hate me?" Like I don't. I'm very self-aware. I know when I'm being a dick. And so like, I can dial it back and go, okay, yeah, that's me. And we're having a conversation, and he's snarling at me, or we're actually having what seems to be a good conversation. And then, he said his piece and I go to say mine. And then he's angry because the point that he was going to make next, I've said something when I was talking that changed the course of the conversation. So he said to me, "You've ruined the conversation. I didn't get to make my point." And I'm going, well, that's not how conversations work. You don't get to dictate what comes out of my mouth. And if you're already so far ahead in what you're thinking that I've ruined what your point is, we're not having a conversation. You are. And so I was trying, and I'm one of those people who I'm going to force that confrontation in order to get the dirty laundry aired. And it didn't matter what I said. It was just angry. And you could walk into the house, and some days he would be himself. And other days you could walk in the front door, and this wall of energy would be there, and you'd know, like, today is not a good day. And it was living with that energy in my house. And like I said to Laverne, I'm like, there's an entity, there's this energy was so thick, it was like having another person in our house. You could sense that they just left the room. They'd completely destroyed the place while they were there, and then they would go into another room. And it was like having that destructive force in our lives. And so, and he could tell that he wasn't himself, but he didn't know how to dial it back. And so, finally he said, I think I need to go and talk to someone. And that was on him. He went and did that on his own. And after his first session talking to a counselor, she said to him, you are having a depressive episode because of your workplace. You need to take time off. And so he left his office, or her office, and contacted his employer and said, I've just talked to a counselor. They say I need to take stress leave. I'm going to take some time off. And he went and got a doctor's note from our family doctor. At that point, it should have started the workman's compensation process in Alberta, where we live. And but nobody did any of the steps that needed to happen at that point to make sure that he got the follow through that he needed. And so I think that was sort of our first lesson that, we didn't know.
I think going back, it's hard to remember a lot of it, because when you memory interruptions are quite common with depression. And so for me, it's hard to remember a lot of the stuff. But I think at the very start, like if we go back to the summer of 2017, I think I was coming home and talking about a lot of it. Or 17. Way back when. I think I was talking about it because I knew from my experience that I couldn't come home and just throw it all on her. And so at the start of it, I think we did talk. After though, after I took the stress leave and then I came back, it was kind of so for about a month. And then that's when I really slipped into the major depressive episode. And boy, my world closed in. And that's when I believe that that other entity kind of showed up. When I did eventually get, I left that counselor, and fast forward a year, and I finally got it into a good psychologist. She asked me, she said, "Do you want a diagnosis?" And I'm like, "Well, if it's PTSD, I probably should know about it, but I just want to get better." And after a while, the Workmen's Compensation Board needed something, so she provided a diagnosis to them, and it was, so there's a bunch of stuff here, but one of them was a major depressive episode that was mild to moderate, and that blew me away. I'm like, that was only moderate? What does severe look like? Right? Like, I mean, there was no hope for me, and to the point that I would be holding our daughter in our arms at night and I would be thinking about ending my own life. And that was only moderate depression. That's crazy. Another thing was general anxiety. Well, yeah, I get it. I'm anxious. Everything was anxious. I was anxious about absolutely everything in my life. And I was doing good at my new job. I was scared. I was doing everything wrong. One of the symptoms I had that she put in was paranoia. And at first I'm like, oh no, she just doesn't get first responders, right? Like, I mean, I look both ways when I go through a green light. She doesn't get us. And then, some of the other stuff that happened, but there was some paranoia there. On top of, the first responder, lack of trust or whatever. But the one that shook me to the core kind of was it was hostility. And that was the correct term for this, other entity. Can you imagine living with a depressed, anxious, hostile, and paranoid person? Like, it was tough. I think now none of those really exist. And the one word that I would use is thankful. I'm thankful for my life. But I'm thankful for my wife. I don't know that I would have stuck around.
Well, Chancy, talk us through what it was like to live with that hostile person. I mean, and I'd also, as a follow-up question, and we can do it now or do it later, I'd be interested to know if you knew that he had suicidal thoughts, and how that might have impacted you.
I was confused. That was like the biggest thing for me is I didn't understand. Like, I knew that he was going through a hard time at work, but the way that everything presented, everything that was upsetting to him wasn't work related when he was at home. It was our children's bedtimes. It was what we were eating. It was money. It was our car. It was, it was always something else. And I'm racking my brain and stretching myself as thin as possible, trying to fix all of these things that are deficient, that are upsetting him. And like I said, constantly saying, like, why do you hate me? I don't understand that feeling of that anger towards me. And I've come to realize that I believe a big part of it was that because you can't be mad at the babies, you know, they're at the time they were newborn and a 2-year-old. You can't blame them. But the new house that we bought when we moved here, giving up the security of the private sector to come back to work in the community, that was a huge financial hit for us. And all of those, I was the physical manifestation of all of those things that he had lost to come here, and all of the things that he couldn't just walk away from. And so, you know, he's in this situation where he's fearing for his safety and well-being, and that of the people he's working for. He's has colleagues who he's hearing say, if there's a fight that breaks out, I don't have your back. I'm not getting out of the car to help you. And you know, so he's at this, he's just lost. And so he's coming home and he's seeing all of these things that are annoyances normally, but with the anxiety and all of the other pressure, it's so much bigger. And so living in that, it was confusing and it was frustrating. And like I wasn't eating or sleeping because we had a new baby, and so I don't get to do a lot of that at the time anyway. But the rest of the time I'm on edge trying to figure out how to fix it. And then I went back to work, and they liked me there. They thought I was pretty good at my job, and you know, there wasn't anybody who thought that I was awful, and they liked me. And so at the end of the day, and I was really switched on with the stuff I was working with. So I want to say that it wasn't a conscious thing where I would go to work and just stay late all the time. I would get, because of the work I was doing with data analysis, I would have to sort of get to a point at the end of the day where I could save and walk away. And sometimes I started things much later than I should have, because it gave me a place I could stay for a while and not have to go home and be defective in my entire life. And so it was very, very challenging. And it was at one point I did say to him, like, we have to figure this out and we have to do it soon, because I can't do this forever. Yeah. And like our children, this is the example that we are setting for what love looks like. Is, you know, daddy is angry and mommy's gone, because that's easier. And so we've had to we've had to work hard and figure out how to fix a lot of things together, and you know, and call each other on things when, you know, we're even not long ago, and this is after, you know, job change and things have been going pretty well. Verne was getting, I was starting to feel that presence again in the house. And we were having a conversation. He was getting just irrationally angry about something. And I said, you need to go see your psychologist. And he lost his mind and stormed out of the room, went and locked himself on the throne, and came back a little while later. And he's like, you're absolutely right. And like, he just needed somebody to say it, because I think when he gets into that anxiety and not like, I don't think that was depression or any, it was just, I think that you lose that self-awareness to sort of see where you actually are, because you're living in this existence that is skewed. And so I think like one of the things that we've been so good together with is that we've learned to say, hey, I don't care if this makes you angry. I think you need to go and get checked out again, because I don't feel that I deserve this behavior from you. And so it's been, that's good, because we sort of opened the chains of communication that way. But life gets hard. You know, not long after I went back to work, I was involved in a car accident. and I was rear-ended. I was at a crosswalk, stopped, letting a kid cross in front of me, and I was rear-ended by a girl who was texting. And so, you know, in the almost 2 years since that, I've developed chronic pain, and so my ability to do a lot of things in our home and just in general was greatly impacted by that. And so Laverne's had to sort of pick up a lot of stuff. And I think that was sort of that event kind of made it so that we had to rely on each other again. Whereas, you know, had we not had where I had to ask for help or he's had to ask for help with things, we would have just kept going our own way, because it's a lot easier to only have to account for one person. But you're having to keep track of two grown-ups and their feelings on stuff, it's harder. And I think like we'd gone to a marriage counselor a while ago, and that was one of the things I said was, you know, I want to feel I want to be in love with my husband again, and I want it to be harder together than easier apart. I want to know going in, this is always going to be hard, but this is what I want. And so I think that's something that we've sort of decided, that we're okay with it being hard as long as we can pull it back when we need to.
We've had to reconstruct our marriage a couple of times. Going through this whole process killed any form of communication. You know,
Screaming, we had that down.
Yeah, loud voices. And I'm very much a family man, and I want to be a great example for our kids, but I couldn't control. I couldn't control my hostility towards her. I honestly, I never did figure out anything what triggered it. Like, I might wake up in the morning, sunshine and roses, and 5 minutes later I'd hate her guts. It happened. It was very hard knowing that it wasn't right, but not being able to control it. And even it would still happen for a while after I was seeing a counselor or a psychologist and getting treatment. And it takes a while to heal. And it's I've since heard that it's like a broken bone. It heals stronger at the broken part, and there's no reason with the psychological injury that you can't be stronger. I do feel stronger and better equipped. At the same time, it's a daily battle. Some days I don't really have to work at it, and other days I have to really focus on my mental health.
Let me ask you a question that came in on the Facebook Live from Brian Ritter. He wants to know if you, anywhere along the way in this journey, were self-medicated with alcohol or any other substances that you were using to try to help you cope with the challenges that you were going through.
Nope. There's two reasons for that. I was always very cognizant at the start of my career that I had to stay away from alcohol or any drugs. And there were times that I would actually be, I would come home from a really bad call, and I would want to sit on the couch and just have a beer, but I wouldn't, because I didn't want it to become habit forming. So I've never really allowed myself that. Or the flip side to that is that I struggle with my weight a lot. So I don't drink beer or alcohol very much anyway, because it's just extra calorie I don't really need. So
And I would say that if there was any self-medicating that was going on, that was likely where it was with food. Verne's weight had, like, when we first moved here, he was in incredible shape. He was riding his bike all the time and running, and like even in the winter he'd have cleats on and he'd go for a run, and I'm like, who is this person? And you know, like he was in amazing shape when we moved here, and right up until even like Christmas the first year we were here, and then the stress of it, he put on.
I put on about 40 pounds in about 2 years, year and a half.
And so for somebody who was so physically active, and when I say he rides his bike, like will ride his bike, his job that he has now is, how far is your office? 20 kilometers?
Yeah.
So, you know, he would ride his bike 40 kilometers round trip for work. Just, you know, get up in the morning and go and do that. And so he stopped wanting to get on the bike. He stopped wanting to play hockey. He stopped wanting to be physically active. And then he was miserable because he's not doing the thing that he enjoys so much, and he's medicating with food. And so I would say that while he wasn't necessarily going to alcohol or drugs, he was definitely, you know, finding other ways to do that.
Eating all the bad crap and just not caring anymore, not having the energy to really do anything. You know, just going to work in the morning was a struggle, let alone staying there all day. And so when I'd come home, it was straight to the couch, you know. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't even playing with my kids. And, you know, in hindsight, that makes me feel bad. I don't feel guilty about it because it's not something I can control. It's the same as the hostility towards her. I feel really bad that she went through it, but I don't have guilt because it was an injury and I couldn't control it.
And that's, I think, probably one of the other things that has been very good for our relationship is that I recognize that this was involuntary. This wasn't my husband talking to me this way. This wasn't the person who proposed to me on the beach in Mexico. This is this person who has been defeated by this culmination of events, and he is just trying to get out the other end of it alive. And the fact that he did, looking back on it now, is remarkable, because I will say quite confidently that I feel that the organization he was working for and the management that he was under, they were cocking the pistol and handing it to him. You know, like they weren't concerned about his well-being. They just, as long as he was showing up and he was writing tickets, they didn't care. And like we've gone and talked to some of the staff with with the HR team, and that was one of the things that I said to them was, you know, like, what would you do if this was your family? How would this feel to you? If you're living with somebody who this is what we're bringing our kids up in, and this is like our marriage has value, and you didn't care. Nobody cared. You turned a blind eye and acted like nothing was happening because that was more convenient than acknowledging what you were doing to this person and every other person in that department. And so it's been a very, very long process. And if I have any anger, it is directed to who I believe it should be directed to. People who were put into the decision-making positions who had no right to be in them. And they were, like I said, cocking the pistol and handing it to him.
Like I told you on one of the earlier episodes, when I left and I got my new job, one of the supervisors there told me, he's like, wow, we've just kind of left you alone. Right? And Chancy has some pretty strong feelings about that, as do I. But, you know, were you going to stand up at my funeral and say, hey, we just kind of left Laverne alone? Um, it's unacceptable. And I almost feel sorry for them because I don't know if they actually realized. I don't know. I don't know that they cared, but I would hate for somebody to be their emotional intelligence to be that stunted that they couldn't figure it out. But some people don't know, and some people are scared to know. I think I mentioned it before. You know, people will ask, "Are you okay?" Well, they don't want to know the truth because the truth is too hard, right? And that's why we got to be comfortable talking about mental health and talking about how we're doing. And you know, if somebody seems, you know, odd or different or off, we have to go and talk to them and ask them how they're doing. You had asked if Chancy had known that I was had suicidal thoughts. I was having a hard time admitting it to myself that I was, and I was minimizing it. And all I ever told her was, I'm in a really dark place. And that was the most I could ever tell her. And well, I'll let her explain. But, you know, she just said, I know, because it was pretty obvious. I was in a dark place.
And he would say things that were, you know, where you knew that he not necessarily contemplating harming himself, but he was certainly wondering what life would look like if he wasn't here anymore. And so he would say things, you know, where like I talked about how, you know, we'd take a financial hit in him changing jobs. And he would say, well, I'm worth far more to you dead than I am. You know, my life insurance is such an amount, and you know, I'm worth far more dead than I am alive. And the house would be paid off, and you and the kids would be set. And I'd be going, well, I don't care if the house is paid off. We're going to pay it off one day anyway, or we're going to burn it to the ground. Like, it's, you know, those are our choices. But we're, you know, like, I signed up for this forever. And I wasn't going to consider what his value was based on a dollar figure. I've done that a few times since then. When things got bad, I'm like, oh, you know, he might be worth more.
I have a big mouth sometimes too, so
but
I can't blame her.
You know, but you know, like the reality is that I knew it was bad because my experience was bad, and I was on the peripheral of it. I was the person, like, I was getting a lot of the hostility and you know, and it's not like he could do that at work. He couldn't go in there and just blast everybody he worked with the way that he could me. And so I think I was probably the only person who was getting the brunt of it. And it wasn't okay. And I can't pretend that it was, but it wasn't my partner who was doing that to me. And so that awareness, I think, has been very good for us. And because of having had my own struggles with chronic pain and some of the medications that I've been put on, where like I lost my ability to care about anything. It was very similar, I think, to where he was at one point. With one of the medications I was on, I was just devoid of emotion. I wasn't invested in our kids. I went through the motions every day and I didn't have pain. So I didn't care if I didn't feel my life because I didn't feel pain. And that was way more important at that point because I'd been in pain for so long. But then my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer and was going downhill rather rapidly. And I didn't feel it. And I went, like, logically, I went, well, that's not right. My dad, we have this great relationship. I loved my father. He deserves for me to feel this. And if I don't feel it now, I'm going to feel it later and it's going to be worse. And so I started the process to wean off those drugs. And as I became more aware of coming back to myself and coming into my life again and what I'd missed by not giving a shit, then I went, oh my God. So like I had that parallel to draw as well. And I think that was really powerful as for my experience, because I'd felt what that void was. And for me, it wasn't a dark place. It was just numb.
Thank you, Laverne and Chancy Friesen, for talking about your mental health near miss and how you're working through those challenges together. Remember, this is part 1 of a 2-part interview, so be sure to check back next week for the second part of their story and some powerful advice for couples. In case you're not aware, I launched this show back in 2014 with a purpose: to give a platform to those who've had near-miss events to tell their stories. When I'm on the road delivering situational awareness programs, the attendees share some of the most amazing near-miss stories. Their stories motivated me to launch this show, so their lessons learned could be shared with a bigger audience. You. The Situational Awareness Matters show, podcasted as SAMatters Radio, and our companion video program, SAMatters TV, on YouTube, along with other videos we have posted there, have enjoyed more than 1 million views, listens, and downloads. I'm so honored to provide this free platform for these incredible lessons to be shared. If you like the show, please do me a favor and subscribe, and share the show with other people and encourage them to subscribe. For the audio version of the show, you can search and subscribe to SAMatters Radio on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, or iHeartRadio. For the video version of the show, subscribe to SAMatters TV on YouTube. Since 2007, our instructional team and consultants have helped more than 1,300 organizations and trained over 86,000 individuals to improve high-risk decision-making outcomes, including fire, police, EMS, industry, military, business, medical, utility, transportation, aviation, energy production, biotechnology, and more. If someone you know works in a high-risk, high-consequence decision-making environment, then we are here to help to improve their safety and to help them accomplish the most important mission of all, and that's to go home from work whole and healthy every day to the ones who love them. I'd like to take a moment to honor and thank some of our recent program and consulting clients. The ExxonMobil Global Response Team in Houston, Texas. The Atascocita Fire Department in Houston, Texas. The Champions Emergency Services District, also in Houston, Texas. The Delaware City Refining Company in Delaware, and Firehouse World in Las Vegas, Nevada. If you're interested in a program, here's where we're going to be upcoming. On March 5, we'll be at the Center for Public Safety Excellence Conference in Orlando, Florida. On March 10th, we'll be at the Maryland Fire and Rescue Institute's National Fire Service Staff and Command School in Annapolis, Maryland. On March 14th, we'll be at the Eastern Oregon EMS Conference in Pendleton, Oregon. On March 16 and 17 at the Kitsap County Fire Training Officers Association Conference in Washington. March 23 at the Spring Fire Department in Spring, Texas. Then we go up to College Station for March 24 to the ExxonMobil Corporate School on the campus of Texas A&M University. Then we turn right around, come back to Spring for another program on March 25 for the Spring Fire Department. April 4 at the Creston Fire Department in Creston, British Columbia. April 24 at the Fire Department Instructors Conference in Indianapolis, Indiana. March 28th at the Buckeye Partners Corporation. Well, it's not a corporation, it's a partnership. Buckeye Partners. In a location to be determined. They haven't set the location yet, but it's a pipeline company. And March 2 at the New York State Fire and Life Safety Educators Conference in Montour Falls, New York. If you want to see the locations of all the upcoming events, just head over to our website, SAMatters.com, and click on the red tab labeled Upcoming Events Schedule. The tab's about halfway down the homepage, so you just scroll down to you see upcoming events and then just click on that. If you're interested in talking with me about conducting a situational awareness assessment for your company or hosting a training program, just click on the Contact Us tab on the top of the homepage, and I will give you a call. Remember to check the show notes for how to subscribe to our free newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we're sharing ideas about how to make better decisions under stress, how to develop strong situational awareness, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 310 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you again to my guests, Laverne and Chancy Friesen. Thank you to our platinum sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to our feature segment sponsor, the Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. And thank you to our associate sponsor, Chief Miller. But most importantly, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SAMatters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit SAMatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.